Millions of people over 60 are unknowingly sabotaging their mobility with the very exercise they've been told is the gold standard for aging well: walking. For decades, public health campaigns, doctors, even well-meaning family members have hammered home the same advice: walk more, walk daily, walk for your heart, walk for your brain. And while walking has undeniable benefits, the uncomfortable truth is that walking alone is leaving a critical gap in your body's armor, a gap that shows up as falls, fractures, and the slow erosion of independence. Recent data from orthopedic centers across North America suggests that among people 65 and older, nearly 1 in 3 will experience a fall each year, and the majority of those who fall do so not because their hearts are weak or their minds are foggy, but because the specific strength and coordination systems that keep you upright have quietly withered away while they were busy logging their daily steps. Here's what they don't tell you. Walking is rhythmic, predictable, forward motion on flat ground. It trains your heart and your endurance, yes, but it doesn't train the sudden sideways lurch when the curb is uneven, the quick pivot when your grandchild darts in front of you, or the explosive power you need to catch yourself mid-stumble. Those are governed by fast twitch muscle fibers, reactive balance pathways, and joint stability that walking simply doesn't reach. And by the time most people realize the deficit, they're already picking themselves up off the pavement or worse, lying in a hospital bed with a hip fracture that statistically cuts lifespan by years, not months. Today, we're going to walk through 3, deceptively simple movements that doctors and physical therapists are now prescribing as non-negotiable for anyone over 60 who wants to stay on their feet and out of the emergency room. These aren't exercises in the traditional sense. They're biological interventions, each one targeting a survival system your body is quietly abandoning because modern life no longer demands it. I'm going to show you exactly how to perform each movement, how often, how to progress safely, and what happens inside your muscles, joints, and nervous system when you do them correctly. And I'll tell you right now, number 2 on this list is the one that surprises people the most, because it looks so absurdly easy that most folks skip it. And yet it's the single strongest predictor of whether you'll still be walking independently at 85. Number 1. That's the movement that can rewire your entire lower body in under 90 seconds a day. And it's been quietly recommended behind closed doors in top geriatric clinics for the past 5 years. Before we go further, drop a comment below and let me know your age and where you're watching from. I read every single one, and it helps me understand who's in this community and what you need most. Let's start with the first movement, the one that addresses the most immediate and dangerous gap that walking leaves wide open. It's called the single leg stance with progressive distraction, and if that sounds technical, don't worry, you'll be doing it in the next 60 seconds. Here's the reality. Every step you take while walking involves a microsecond where all your weight is on one leg. But that moment is so brief and so supported by forward momentum that your brain never has to fully engage the stabilizing muscles around your hip, knee, and ankle. Standing still on one leg, however, forces every tiny muscle in your foot, every ligament in your ankle, every stabilizer around your hip to fire in real time, making thousands of micro-adjustments per minute to keep you from toppling over. This is what's called proprioceptive training, and it's the difference between catching yourself when you trip and going down hard. Data from Balance Labs shows that people who can stand on one leg for less than 10 seconds have a significantly higher risk of falls and early mortality compared to those who can hold it for 30 seconds or more. That 10-second threshold isn't arbitrary. It represents the minimum level of neuromuscular coordination your body needs to recover from an unexpected loss of balance. And here's the kicker. Most 60-year-olds can't do it. Not because they're frail, but because they've never trained it. Walking won't get you there. You need deliberate practice. Let me tell you about Robert, 72, retired electrician, loved hiking with his wife on weekends. He walked 5 miles a day, had a resting heart rate in the 50s, blood pressure like a teenager. Then, one morning, he stepped off a curb, rolled his ankle, went down on his hip, spiral fracture. 6 weeks non-weight bearing, 3 months of rehab, never got back to hiking. When I worked with him post-recovery, I had him try the single-leg stance. He couldn't hold it for 5 seconds. His walking had kept his cardiovascular system sharp, but it had done nothing for the reactive strength and balance he needed in that split-second moment. We spent 2 weeks doing single-leg holds just 30 seconds per side, twice a day. Within a month, he was back to 10 seconds easy, 20 with focus. Within 3 months, he was hiking again. And more importantly, he knew how to train the system that mattered. Here's how you do it. Stand next to a countertop or sturdy chair, something you can touch lightly for balance if needed. Lift 1 foot off the ground, just a few inches, knee slightly bent. Your goal is to stand still, not wobble, not grab the counter unless you absolutely have to. Start with 10 seconds per side. If that's easy, close your eyes for the last 5 seconds. Closing your eyes removes visual input and forces your proprioceptive system to work harder. If that's still easy, turn your head slowly side to side while standing on one leg. That's the progressive distraction part. You're adding cognitive and vestibular load, which mimics real-world conditions where you're balancing while looking around or thinking about something else. Do this twice a day, every day. 30 seconds per side is your target. When you hit 30 seconds with eyes closed and head turning, you've built a stability reserve that most people half your age don't have. Safety note: if you have severe neuropathy or a history of frequent falls, keep your hand on the counter the whole time and focus on just lifting the foot and holding for 5 seconds. Progress slowly. The goal is not to test your limits but to expand them gradually. Here's the bridge into the next movement. Single leg stance rebuilds your static balance, the ability to hold position. But life doesn't happen in static positions. Life happens in transitions, in movements that require force and speed, and that's where the second movement comes in. This one's going to look so simple you'll think I'm wasting your time, but I promise you, this is the movement that physical therapists use as a litmus test for whether someone is going to age with independence or age into dependence. It's called the sit-to-stand, and if you can't do it correctly without using your hands, you're already in trouble. Here's why this matters. The ability to stand up from a chair without pushing off with your hands is a direct measure of lower body power, specifically the explosive strength of your quads, glutes, and hip flexors. Research from gerontology centers has shown that people who cannot perform 5 sit-to-stands in under 15 seconds have significantly higher rates of hospitalization, nursing home admission, and mortality over the next decade. This isn't about fitness. This is about survival. When you lose the power to stand up unassisted, you lose the ability to get off the toilet independently, to get out of bed without help, to rise from a fall. And once you lose that, independence collapses like a house of cards. Walking doesn't train this. Walking is horizontal motion. Standing up is vertical power against gravity. It requires a different type of muscle fiber, the fast-twitch fibers that generate force quickly. And those fibers atrophy fast when you don't use them. If you spend most of your day sitting and your only exercise is walking, you're training endurance but starving power. And power is what keeps you autonomous. Let me tell you about Linda. 68, former teacher, walked her dog every morning. Thought she was doing great. Then she went to visit her daughter, sat down on a low couch and couldn't get back up without rocking forward and pushing hard with both hands. She laughed it off, called herself out of shape. But her daughter, who's a nurse, didn't laugh. She had Linda try the sit-to-stand test at home. Linda could barely do 3 reps without using her hands, and by the 5th rep, she was exhausted. That's when Linda came to see me. We started with chair height modifications and assisted reps, and within 4 weeks she was doing 10 reps unassisted. More importantly, she understood what she'd been missing. Her walks had maintained her stamina, but they'd let her power drain away. Here's the protocol. Find a chair that brings your knees to about 90 degrees when you sit. Kitchen chairs usually work well. Sit down with your feet flat, hip-width apart. Cross your arms over your chest. Now stand up without leaning forward excessively and without using your hands. If you can't do it, scoot forward to the edge of the chair and try again. If you still can't, place one hand lightly on the armrest but do the work with your legs. Your goal is 3 sets of 10 reps, done slowly and controlled, once a day. The descent is just as important as the rise. Lower yourself slowly, don't just drop into the seat. That eccentric phase builds strength and teaches control. As you get stronger, make it harder. Use a lower chair. Hold a lightweight object against your chest, maybe a gallon jug of water. Do the reps slower, taking 5 seconds to stand and 5 seconds to sit. Or do a single leg variant. Sit down normally, then stand up using only one leg while the other hovers. That's advanced, but it's the gold standard for lower body power in older adults. Safety modification. If you have knee pain, don't go below 90 degrees. If you have severe arthritis, start with a higher chair or even a countertop edge where you're doing a shallow squat motion. The movement pattern is what matters. You're teaching your nervous system to recruit muscle fibers and coordinate force. Strength will follow. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is the transition into the third movement. You've rebuilt your balance with the single leg stance. You've restored your power with the sit to stand. But there's one more survival system that walking completely ignores, and it's the one that determines whether a stumble becomes a fall or a quick recovery. It's your lateral stability, the ability to move and stabilize side to side, and it's governed by a set of muscles most people don't even know they have. That's what Movement 3 targets, and it's the one that can genuinely rewire your lower body in less than 2 minutes a day. This movement is called the lateral step down. And before you roll your eyes thinking it's just another balance drill, let me explain what's happening under the surface. When you walk forward, you're using your quads and your hip flexors and your calves in a very linear plane. But the muscles that prevent your knee from collapsing inward, the ones that stabilize your pelvis when you shift weight to one side, those are your hip abductors, specifically the gluteus medius and minimus. And they only activate with lateral load. If those muscles are weak, your knee caves inward when you step, your hip drops on the opposite side, and you lose the ability to correct a sideways fall. Studies from sports medicine clinics show that weak hip abductors are one of the strongest predictors of knee pain, hip degeneration, and fall-related injuries in older adults. And guess what? Walking won't fix it. Here's what makes the lateral step down so powerful. It's a controlled single-leg movement in the frontal plane, meaning you're loading one leg while moving sideways, forcing your glutes and hip stabilizers to fire hard to keep your pelvis level and your knee tracking straight. It also trains eccentric control, the ability to resist force as you lower yourself, which is exactly what you need when you're stepping off an uneven surface or catching yourself mid-trip. You're essentially teaching your body to be an active shock absorber instead of a passive ragdoll. Let me tell you about Margaret, 75, loved gardening, spent hours kneeling and standing, getting up and down. She walked every afternoon with her neighbor, felt strong. Then one day she stepped sideways off a garden stone. Her knee buckled inward and she went down hard. No fracture, but a bad sprain and a warning from her doctor. She came to me frustrated, convinced her legs were just too old. I had her do a simple test. Stand on one leg and slowly lower into a mini squat while watching her knee in a mirror. Her knee dove inward, way past her toes, and her hip dropped on the opposite side. Classic weak hip abductors. We started lateral step downs, 3 sets of 6 reps per side, 3 times a week. Within 2 weeks, her knee tracking was better. Within 6 weeks, she could do the movement with perfect control. No wobble, no inward collapse. And when she went back to gardening, she was stepping and pivoting with confidence she hadn't felt in years. Here's how to do it safely. Find a stable step, like the bottom stair in your house or a sturdy low platform, something 4 to 6 inches high. Stand sideways on the step with one foot, the other foot hanging off the edge. Slowly lower the hanging foot toward the ground by bending the knee of the standing leg, but keep your hips level. Don't let your pelvis tilt. Touch the ground lightly with your hanging foot, then push back up using only the leg that's on the step. That's 1 rep. Do 6 to 8 reps, then switch sides. Your goal is 3 sets per side, 3 times a week. Watch yourself in a mirror or record a video on your phone. Your knee should track straight over your toes, not diving inward. Your hips should stay level, not sagging on the side of the hanging leg. If you can't control the movement, use a lower step or hold a railing lightly with your fingertips for balance. The movement should feel like a controlled descent, not a drop. As you get stronger, increase the step height. Go slower. Pause at the bottom for 2 seconds before pushing back up. Or add a light weight in the opposite hand to increase the stabilization challenge. This movement is deceptively hard when done correctly, and that's the point. You're forcing muscles to work that have been asleep for years. Safety note: if you have knee pain on the inside of the joint, stop and check your form. Inward knee collapse is a sign of weak glutes, not a sign that the exercise is bad for you. Scale back the range of motion and build up slowly. If you have balance issues, do this next to a wall where you can touch it lightly if needed. Now, let's talk about what happens when you combine all 3 of these movements into a single daily practice. You're not just exercising. You're re-educating your nervous system. The single leg stance is teaching your brain to trust your balance reflexes again. The sit-to-stand is rebuilding the explosive power you need for every vertical transition in your day. The lateral step-down is restoring the hip and knee stability that prevents falls and injuries when life throws you a curveball. Together, these 3 movements address the exact gaps that walking leaves open, and they do it in under 10 minutes a day. Here's the protocol I recommend. Every morning, right after you get out of bed or right after breakfast, do this sequence. Single leg stance, 30 seconds per side, eyes open first, then eyes closed if you can. Sit to stand, 3 sets of 10 reps, slow and controlled. Lateral step down, 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps per side, watching your form. That's it. 10 minutes. You're not trying to break a sweat. You're not training for a marathon. You're maintaining the movement systems that keep you independent, and here's the beautiful part. You'll see results fast. Within 2 weeks, your balance will feel more stable. Within 4 weeks, standing up from chairs will feel easier. Within 6 weeks, you'll notice you're moving with more confidence, taking stairs without gripping the railing, stepping off curbs without that little hesitation. These aren't subtle changes. They're the difference between moving like someone who's afraid of their own body and moving like someone who trusts it. One more thing. Let's talk about progression, because the worst thing you can do is hit a plateau and stop challenging yourself. Your body adapts fast, especially in the beginning, and if you keep doing the same thing at the same intensity, the benefits stall. Here's how to keep progressing. For the single leg stance, add complexity. Turn your head, close your eyes, stand on a soft surface like a couch cushion, or do it while brushing your teeth to add a cognitive distraction. For the sit-to-stand, increase reps, slow down the tempo, lower the chair, or add weight. For the lateral step-down, raise the step, increase the pause at the bottom, or add a resistance band around your thighs to force your hip abductors to work even harder. The goal is not to make these movements exhausting. The goal is to make them progressively challenging so your nervous system keeps adapting. You're building resilience, not fatigue. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. What about walking? Should you stop walking entirely? Absolutely not. Walking is still valuable for cardiovascular health, for mood, for getting outside and staying social. But walking alone is not enough. If you're spending an hour a day walking and 0 minutes training balance, power, and lateral stability, you're leaving yourself vulnerable. Think of walking as the foundation and these 3 movements as the structure you build on top. You need both, and if you're someone who's already dealing with chronic knee pain, hip stiffness, or a history of falls, these movements are even more critical. You might need to start with modifications, higher chairs, lower steps, holding a railing, but the movement patterns are the same. You're retraining your body to do what it was designed to do but has forgotten how. Let me give you one more story. James, 79, widowed, lived alone, fiercely independent. He walked every day, rain or shine, thought he was doing everything right. Then he slipped on a wet floor in his kitchen, went down hard, fractured his wrist. The fall scared him more than the fracture. He started second-guessing every step, holding onto furniture, moving like he was 90. His daughter brought him to me. We did the 3-movement protocol every single day, no exceptions. The first week was rough. He couldn't hold the single-leg stance for more than 5 seconds. Sit to stand took him 3 tries before he could do it without hands. Lateral step-downs were out of the question, but he stuck with it. By week 4, he was holding the single-leg stance for 20 seconds. By week 8, he was doing sit-to-stands with a weighted vest. By week 12, he was doing lateral step-downs off a 6-inch step with perfect form. More importantly, he was moving through his house like he owned it again. No hesitation, no fear. He told me the movements gave him his confidence back, and confidence is half the battle when it comes to aging well. Here's the bottom line. Walking is not enough. If you're over 60 and you want to stay mobile, independent, and out of the hospital, you need to train the systems that walking doesn't touch. Balance, power, lateral stability. These 3 movements give you all of that in less than 10 minutes a day, and the return on investment is enormous. You're not just adding years to your life, you're adding life to your years, and that's what matters. So here's my question for you. Which one of these 3 movements are you going to start with today? And what's the one physical challenge you're hoping it will help you overcome? Drop your answer in the comments below. I want to hear your story, and I'll be reading every response.